But when we started to scale this out, like we've got thousands of endpoints and thousands of different applications that we want for individual tools. So it just didn't scale in the way that we wanted. When we started to expand, it just became flakier and flakier to a point like it was kind of more of an exponential flakiness once you went beyond, let's say, 12 to 15 tools.
In general, kind of the hard part for us really was the context management, I think. I think everyone's running into this, and there's so many different ways to solve this, and every week there's a new blog about the best way to manage your context,
where like you add more and more functionality, you have more like kind of roadmap items, and you add like a big chunk to your prompt, and it doesn't make things fail, but it just makes things slightly flakier and flakier until the point where you just kind of pulling your hair out, smashing bugs and nothing else.
You'd almost say it's required for any sort of production level agents. If you're not prompt caching, you're losing money.
Hi, John and Aaron. How are you?
Good. Hi, Roman. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, hey. Thanks for joining me. So welcome to the AWS Developers Podcast. I'm really happy to have you guys. So you do work for Genesys, and Genesys is a contact center type of solution, right? So can we start with the introductions first? Maybe John, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm John, and I've worked for Genesys for 4 and a bit years now. I started off in software development and then moved into machine learning. I'm now a manager as part of the team that developed Genesys Cloud Copilot. So I've been working on that for approximately 1.5 years now. So that's been an exciting project moving into the world of agentic AI. Yeah.
Perfect. What about you, Aaron?
Yeah, my name's Aaron Tummon. I'm from Galway in the west of Ireland, where we have one of our main Genesys offices. I got into software development maybe just around 9 years ago, I think. Started out working some Java SIP servers, some nice technical stuff. Moved into the embedded world, then to automotive, and now I'm into AI and agentic AI. So yeah, I'm kind of getting a taste of everything so far.
Nice, exciting. So I actually started my career at working for Renault on car-to-car communication, so embedded technologies as well. So it was really fun at the time. And we have a former colleague of mine in AWS from AWS that just joined Genesys in Galway, actually. Michael Hasenblas. He's an expert in everything Kubernetes and observability. So definitely reach out to him. He's great.
Yeah, I've seen him around. Lots of people are very happy to meet him.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I bet. He's incredible. We worked in the same team before. He's great. So nice. Perfect. Thank you. Excited to have you guys joining us today and talking about this Copilot. So I think it was launched not so long ago, and you talked about it in London at the latest summit. So it would be great to hear more about this solution and what it does. So let's start with what it is and why you build this for your customers.
Yeah, sure. I can take that one. So maybe just give a little bit of background of who Genesys are. So we, as you say, like our main part of our business is customer experience, or the key part of our business is customer experience. Our main platform is Genesys Cloud. So that basically aligns all of the different media and different ways that you can interact with your customers, be it voice, messaging, phone calls, things like that, and kind of join them all together and understand how we can optimize and create the best possible customer experience. So from an administrative point of view, you've got lots of queues and things like that you put all of your agents on, and you have to kind of roll with the punches and understand, like, what the contact center needs. Does it need more agents on one queue or the next, or do you want to, create more users, things like that.
Are we talking about human agents? Or AI agents. Yeah.
Human agents.
That gets so confusing for us. So much things named agent nowadays.
Yeah, we've got like 10 different definitions for agents, and depending on what call you're on, you use the same word, but have to understand the nuance of the change in definition. But Yeah, so we've roughly 8,000 customers worldwide on Genesys. 7,000 of those are on Genesys Cloud. And we have 2 million users, so most of them will be agents, but 2 million user licenses. Some of the biggest players that we work with are Virgin Atlantic, Vodafone, Nespresso, HSBC. So, like, if you've ever interacted with one of them or their customer service in any capacity, that would be us, and we make that all happen. So we deploy in over 21 regions worldwide. And if you still don't know who we are, or if you've never interacted with us through those businesses, one way you might know us, if you follow European rugby, we're on the front of the Connacht jersey. And if you don't follow that, you'll recognize us from the nose cone of the Ferrari in 2026. So our logo is right there. So you might have
Close to
spotted it before.
AWS then.
Yeah, I know. So it's a pretty cool one. We've got lots of little model Ferrari toys around the office and stuff like that. Lots of little bits of merch, so it's kind of cool.
Good. Perfect.
But, yeah.
I'd
To loop back
like
to
one.
your... Sorry.
I'd like one if you have spare Ferraris.
I don't have one, so...
Okay. All right, cool. So, talking more about this Cloud Copilot. So now you shared with us what Genesys is about and how customers are interacting with this. So can you tell us more about this initiative about Cloud Copilot?
Yeah. So when you're an administrator or supervisor within a contact center, there's complexity to configuring it, and a lot of it is kind of things you will learn in the day-to-day operation, but you may not change things day to day, or you may not do a specific thing day to day, and it can be challenging. You have to move between multiple different UIs and understand a lot of the nuance of how the contact center works. Whereas we wanted to add an agentic layer that just sits there and is kind of like a kind of a partner in your day-to-day life that you can ask questions to. It'll fetch knowledge, it'll actually perform tasks for you, and you can bounce ideas off it, and it can help you dig into problems within the contact center, or maybe bottlenecks. Maybe let's say you have a queue that's backed up. What do I do? What's the standard practice here? Can I maybe add more agents or something like that? If I add more agents, where do those agents come from? Will that have an effect somewhere else in the contact center? So that was kind of one of the key areas we wanted to focus on, kind of a way to speak to Genesys Cloud, if you like.
Okay. So is that more of an assistant to admins of the Genesys platform, or is this also available to the real human agents that are interacting with customers through Genesys?
So it's available to everybody, but depending on your persona within the org, you'll have different tools and different things to suit your individual needs. So if you're an agent, you might have access to your own timesheets and like resource center and stuff like that. But if you're an admin, you'll have the ability to add and create users and move queues and all sorts of different administrative tools that you wouldn't otherwise have if you're just an agent.
Okay, good, perfect. So, what were some of the problems that you were trying to solve when you build that platform? Was it really to make sure that the experience for the admin would be smoother, or was it something different that you were trying to achieve?
So I think the initial build out was to add the kind of functionality that they would do in their day-to-day lives. Like, these people are sitting on Genesys Cloud 8 hours a day. So whatever we can do to kind of optimize that and make them more efficient as users. But then to kind of go on to the next level and the next phase that we're kind of working through now is to perform more complex tasks like investigating, perform like kind of deep work where you're kind of going really into the heart of the problem, pulling different analytics dashboards, things like that, and being able to see, okay, why is my handle time going up, which is the amount of time that a user spends on a queue. Like, why are users spending 10 minutes on a queue now when they spend 5 minutes today? And you can just type that in as a question. Normally this would take you maybe an hour or 2 hours or whatever to dig in, to go to all these different dashboards, pull all the data you need. But to be able to just do it in a sentence and say, I'll be back in a minute, I'll fetch all this stuff for you, and then explain what next steps are. So you can imagine that that's a really, really a big optimization, you could, you can save a lot of time by having just a chat interface to just ask these really abstract questions and have it all come back to you.
Okay.
We also we're providing this, right now it's very much hands-on. You're asking questions. You need the user to be interacting. Like with the way AI is going, we realize that eventually this will have to be also just kind of happening in the background, right? You don't need the user to be asking the questions. Soon you'll be able to have, the Copilot will tell you, oh, by the way, this looks like it's kind of gone out of whack. You should check this, and really enhance the user's experience that way too.
Okay, good. I think we have a better understanding of what this platform is about. So let's go under the cover, under the hood, and understand okay how this works, and your journey also in building the system. Was this the first agentic product that you launched as a company?
No, so there were two main efforts that were released roughly around the same time. So we have Agent Copilot and Admin Copilot.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of, I suppose. Yeah, one person will tell you which was released first, but
Okay.
A race to the finish. Out released before the other.
Good. So what was your journey in building this? Where did you start from? What solutions did you explore?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So the landscape has changed so much in the past year. Like we started developing this like roughly around March of last year.
Okay.
And at that time, a lot of the like frameworks and stuff that were built like were very like hard to operate. Like you're kind of engineering around them instead of engineering on top of them, I would say.
Like LangGraph, like those tool, like those agentic framework that.
Yes, we actually never really explored line graph. So there were kind of early efforts and early kind of experiments with Bedrock Inline Agents.
Yeah.
And we had tried to use them for like 2 or 3 months, and they worked great for like individual what we'd call like skills or agents, which is like one small like domain specific piece of functionality, if you like. So it might be like user management, for example, add, create, and modify users. But when we started to scale this out, like we've got thousands of endpoints and thousands of different applications that we want for individual tools, so it just didn't scale in the way that we wanted. Which it was kind of getting around to that kind of May time, and we kind of come out of a lot of POCs, and it had worked great. And then when we started to expand, it just became flakier and flakier to a point like it was kind of more of an exponential flakiness once you went beyond, let's say, 12 to 15 tools. And the release of Strands Agents came at a very, very good time for us, because we kind of run into
May.
Yeah, May, exactly. So we kind of run into these frustrations, and just this silver bullet came along, if you like, Strands, which was just such a kind of breath of fresh air compared to something like inline agents. Like a lot of the stuff is like, it does come out of the box and you get kind of like the most kind of fundamental stuff out of the box, but it just leaves you so much room to be able to expand and build on top of it without any kind of pinch points. But I'm sure like Aaron can speak more to that, because Aaron is a big fanboy for Strands, I think, at this point.
Right. Okay, let's go, Aaron.
Yeah.
Oh, put on the spot.
Yeah.
No, we found Strands very useful. Like John said, the defaults really helped you to get off the ground, and this is kind of the common thing you'll hear across building, agentic AI, is that it's great to set up your prototype or get something going, and then trying to actually productionize it is really hard. But we found that the more we were growing and the more kind of headaches we had to solve, the fundamental software engineering things, like just rate limiting was one that came up very early, that we were like, oh, wow, we're using all our accounts tokens. We should really put some rate limiting in here and make sure we're not ruining everyone else's experience. But we just found that Strands allowed us to build all of this pretty easily. There's been a few points where we've had to maybe work around it, or we have our own kind of a custom functionality around Strands, but overall, it's been really good experience developing with it.
Can you elaborate on those points? I mean, what were the changes that you were facing with
I
Strands?
guess it would be more domain specific, right? So we have certain things in Genesys Cloud for even like our authorization and permissioning. We don't want to let the agent use tools that the user itself wouldn't be able to use. And we've kind of built in some logic in around that. But overall, yeah, pretty easy to extend and use.
Perfect. So Strands as the framework for building those agents. And are you using Agent Core? Like, I mean, you just talked about authentication and authorization. So there's a module for that in Agent Core. So is that something that you explore as well together with Strands?
Yeah, we've definitely looked into it, and it does have a lot of functionality that we would like to use. The problem for us is how widely deployed Genesys Cloud is across all 21 plus regions, and Agent Core isn't there just yet. So we have to kind of limit ourselves that way. But we're definitely keeping on top of the functionality, and when potentially we can use it, it'll definitely be an option for us. Okay.
So you have customized those particular building blocks like authorization or authentication because of your requirements in terms of region and so many. I mean, you have 21 regions, as you said, where your cloud is deployed on. So basically, you need you would need those capabilities to be equally distributed across all the regions. Yeah. And we're working on it. Good.
It's not easy. I think everyone wants to, GPUs are hard to come by. Everyone's trying to build out their own. So yeah, it's understandable why this mightn't just be, spun up in a second.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So can you tell me more about how you build that solution? So it's mostly Strands, basically, as the framework for agentic, and then you had to create your custom solutions to cope with some of your requirements. And where is that running on? The agents. So, how do you deploy those agents in production?
Yeah, right now we're using a serverless approach, which has worked quite well for us, and Strands has built this in as kind of it seems that basically every feature we've seen released of Strands has, catered for the serverless approach. A lot of built-in things for like keeping your state in S3 and loading it in. And a lot of it means that we can be a bit more hands-off on that, which has been helpful. And then in general, the hard part for us really was the context management, I think. I think everyone's running into this, and there's so many different ways to solve this, and every week there's a new blog about the best way to manage your context. Strands has kind of let us use what we I think it's called agents as tools. Mm-hmm. You'll see, I think it's mentioned in the Strands documentation, but basically it just means that we're containing all our domain specific knowledge within sub agents, and we're having a kind of higher level orchestrator decide which agent should take that request.
Okay, so that was a question I wanted to ask. So you have a multi-agent type of deployment. So and you have and you are using Strands framework to build that. And do you have any particular orchestration approach that you took? Because you have how do we call that when agents are working all together?
Swarm?
Yeah, swarm. Yeah, swarm of agents. And so what type of setup do you have?
So we use agents as tools, and like swarm, works for a particular use case. But going back to what I said before, like where we have different personas, like we have agents, supervisors, admins, we want to be able to like pull functionality in and out and not have it affect the overall like system. So
Okay.
agents as tools basically create like a really clear line of separation between your sub agents and your orchestrator. So depending on permissions and a few different factors, you can pull them in and out, and configure the different agents, or configure for different users. And the orchestrator will just talk to the sub agent as if it's just a tool call. So it'll have a single parameter, passes in like a natural language string, and it just offloads all of that to a sub agent. And the orchestrator just handles things like translation or UI component generation and other things like that, and reasoning. So yeah, it kind of it delegates more so than has it all in one massive orchestrator, like kind of web of agents.
Okay. And back to your point, Aaron, about the fact that context management. When you have multiple agents, how do you manage the context too? So it's not, you are not overloading the agents with too many data or too many tools that are available. Or is there a particular approach that you took for that?
See, that's one thing we're fighting every day. So I wouldn't say we have this necessarily solved, but we have some. We're definitely making good improvements every day. One of the most useful things is that, once again, Strands has a lot of defaults. They've got what's called conversation managers.
Yes.
And they are basically let you decide how you want to manage your context. And this is purely, just if the context window is growing, how do you want to manage that? And we use a mix of both. They offer the summarizing conversation manager. So if it's reaching your context window limit, it'll just summarize what's happened. You get a bit of control over how many messages you want to keep, how many messages you want to summarize. So we use some of that. And then for some of our other pieces, we use the sliding window, where we don't really, we want to keep a bit of context, but we don't really care if something goes out of that context. So that's been really useful.
Yeah, and it's a feature that was released not so long time ago, right? The context management, the conversation management, right, in Strands was not there earlier in May.
That's a good question. It's been there for as long as I remember, or at least maybe I wasn't paying too much attention to it at the start. Maybe we didn't have as much context to manage, let's say, when we were starting out. But I think it's been there for a while.
Yeah, I would say so too. I think it's been there since quite nearly the beginning, or at the beginning, if not. But just to kind of add on to Aaron's point there, like the way that we manage context within, like between agents. So the orchestrator has a really long like context window and conversation window, so it'll remember a lot of messages back and a lot of different interactions with agents. Whereas sub agents are like stateless, if not have like a very short context window. So they might remember within a single orchestrator invocation, but not necessarily 10 messages ago when they were interacted with. So this kind of narrows, like it means that they're quite light on their feet. They don't have they're not bloated with massive amounts of context, and they don't use as many tokens.
Good. And do you use any skills from Strands that can be loaded dynamically, so to save on context as well?
Yeah,
Aaron
I've been love skills. So we currently don't use skills. I'm always keeping my eyes open for when we can bring them in. It's I've also been thinking, we've been using these agents as tools, and orchestrator with sub agents kind of pattern. Which I always think, I'm like, what if we just had one agent that would swap in and out skills? This would be a similar approach, and you can do some fun stuff with your context management. I can't remember what blog post it was, but they had this cool idea of, you've one context window, one agent, and you're just smartly able to mark it and say, okay, everything I'm doing now is kind of a subtask, and I'm just going to roll that back with a summary when it's done. And that fits with skills, because you can just load in a skill. Then you can say, all right, I've loaded in skill. This is going to be temporary. Do this. And then next turn, it's all gone. And now you can start again.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some cool things we can do with skills, but right now it's still all experimental and a lot of dreams.
I'm not aware that we can unload skills though. So once you load the skill, that's in your context. So you need another session to start from
If
fresh.
we're now I can't. I have to look into this again. But I had the idea of that basically our sub agents, our system prompt would be loaded in, and because we're basically running up a new agent every turn on serverless, we can basically change whatever's in the system prompt per turn. Depending on that, we could hypothetically, you could change your prompt to have the new skill loaded in there on your next turn. So there is a bit of dynamicness to it that we could use, but all theoretical right now. No working examples.
So since you are using a serverless approach, are you using durable functions or just plain lambdas?
Just plain lambdas.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I highly encourage you to have a look at durable functions. Maybe because you have those. I had an episode actually with a product manager of durable function that explained how to use this service in the context of agentic. So very interesting because that gives you more option for long-lasting interactions if you have some. So or when you have to wait for information from other services or other agents.
Yeah, no, we've definitely we have thought about some use cases where people are asking for maybe longer running tools, or we're thinking about asynchronous, and maybe that comes in there, or definitely with the idea of code execution, which is always an interesting one. We love the idea of that as well, but you open a big can of worms with code execution, right? Like you've got to have your sandboxes, and I know Agent Core does provide this. So maybe if that was, once that starts to roll out to some regions, maybe we can leverage that one.
Okay, good. So what about I think a question that everyone has is, how do you trust your agents to do the right things? So what have you learned? What are some of the challenges that you faced, and how is it working for you guys?
So yeah, it's a very good question. I think it's very easy to build out a POC to do all the things you want in a month or two. And then you spend 6 months picking up the pieces and trying to stabilize it and trust it. And one of the things that we've really focused on is testing. We've built an extensive testing framework, and we actually had to build our own because they didn't really exist at the time that we were initially building out Cloud Copilot. So yeah, if you want to stabilize it, testing is such a key part of that, and having proper guardrails, all that sort of stuff. We can kind of go into more detail on those different avenues, but making changes with prompts and stuff like that is not the same as making changes in standard code. We found particularly when your context gets big, for example, our orchestrator has hundreds and hundreds of lines of prompts for different tasks that it has to perform in any particular execution. So that makes making one small change to, let's say, UI component generation prompt can have an effect on translation or something like that. So every single time we make a change, we run a complete suite of tests, and we're very kind of quick to react when these things happen. So whenever there's a test failure in our lower environments, we jump on it, and we have a dedicated person every single week called a Sentinel, and they basically create an investigation. They have an investigation, create bug tickets, all that sort of stuff, and they go straight into our next sprints. So yeah, we try and keep rolling with the punches, but it is kind of a constant game of whack-a-mole where you're kind of you fix one, you create two more. But yeah, I think the way that we have things separated, and we're starting to even look at further delegation. So maybe not have one orchestrator agent with larger prompts, but maybe have multiple orchestrator agents that deal with a different like life cycle of a particular message. So it might, have the reasoning first, and maybe UI component and language generation comes in, like, or language translation comes in later. And then, the shorter your prompts, the more stable you're likely to be. And this again comes in with it, where like you add more and more functionality, you have more like kind of roadmap items, and you add like a big chunk to your prompt, and it doesn't make things fail, but it just makes things slightly fakier and flakier and flakier until the point where you just kind of pulling your hair out, smashing bugs and nothing else. Yeah, I don't know, Aaron, do you have anything to add to that? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, no, just the idea of there's never it's never like we've added this prompt change is a breaking change. It's the last 5 prompt changes have now added up to one weird behavior over here, which is, a breaking change. So it's very hard to keep on top of it. But like you said, we have a thorough testing framework to make sure it keeps us honest, and make sure that we do catch these when they do creep in.
Okay, but how do you use agent evaluation at all? Like from Strands, there's a possibility to do that.
Yeah, we've so like John said, when we started out, we didn't have this. It wasn't available, and we had begun to build out our own framework, which comes with its own issues of maintenance, and you need to spend time actually making sure this framework is bug free and useful and easy to use. And then obviously, so then Strands agent evaluation SDK came along, which is great and offers a lot of functionality that, well, some of it we've already implemented, but also much more.
Okay.
And so only recently we're slowly starting to move over to it. I think the goal is to fully move over to it, so we can pass off the maintenance burden to the team working on that, and start to leverage some of the cool features that are there.
So yeah, and just to kind of loop back onto that as well. So we've got 2 categories of agentic tests. So we have agent evaluations, as you described, which basically, like, we started out and it was only agent evaluation. And one thing that we found was that, like, you're kind of testing for things like tone and the way that responses are generated and formatting and things like that. And that's all kind of good to analyze with an LLM judge to say, okay, yeah, did this work, or did it, format it like that. But when you're actually making like stateful changes to a system like Genesys Cloud, we found that you can have, like, we have another suite of tests that basically inject a prompt into, or a message into the back end. It goes the whole way through the stack, and we check to make sure the necessary changes were made. And we found that can be even more important, and is more important. Like, we have more of those tests, let's say, than the agent evaluations. Like, agent evaluations might test things like translation and things like that, the actual formatting of the text, and to make sure that our prompts are giving the right output to users, and maybe we're hitting the right guardrails and things like that. So yeah, that's just a little bit more background.
Okay, so if I summarize, you have a bunch of testing suite that you run to make sure that you don't have weird situations. You have LLM as a judge, and you are using the Strands SDK evaluation SDK to make sure that whatever comes out of the model is, or the agent is actually aligned with what you expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything else?
Have
you looked into automated reasoning?
No. I'm not sure if I've heard of that. Automated reasoning, is that what you called it?
Yeah. So at reInvent last year, we had several talks about that topic. And since then, we have released more and more capabilities within Bedrock, for example. So so you have the ability to mathematically prove some of the outputs of an agent. So that helps also. further
Yeah,
evidence.
I think
We've seen this.
I did a talk at the AWS conference in Kilkenny, and one of the co-speakers was talking about this. Just trying to find his second name. It's Benjamin. But
Danilo Poccia?
I'd have to look and verify that because it's been a lot has happened since then. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Benjamin. I can't remember your name.
That's a cool. Yeah. So that's something that we see more and more. We do use that more and more internally. Very interesting to see that. Um, at the scale that you're operating, I think, and because you said that you have millions of users, I guess that very quickly a question will come up about pricing and how many tokens we are using and so on. So, what have you done so far to make sure that the costs are under control?
So yeah, I don't think we can. There's certain areas of this that we can't really necessarily talk about, but to kind of talk on a high level,
Hmm.
we we initially started out using Sonnet as our kind of core model, and found that particularly without any optimizations, is quite quite costly and drives the cost per action up. So we charge on a per action basis. So basically, for every manipulation within Genesys Cloud, or invocation of an API or whatever it is, we charge on that basis. So we moved to Haiku 4.5, and then kind of had further delegation among agents. So basically, instead of having larger agents, have smaller agents, but just use a smaller model. One really key optimization, like everyone obviously knows about it, but prompt caching. But it is kind of shocking how much of a reduction in cost you can get from implementing
Yeah,
prompt caching. Like we've seen, like I think, like yeah, I don't know if I'm able to keep even exact percentages, but yeah, a significant,
significant. Okay.
yeah, significant reductions in costs.
Yeah, you'd almost say it's required for any sort of production level agents. If you're not prompt caching, you're losing money.
It's so
Yeah.
wasteful not using especially in something like this where your old context, your old messages, all that sort of stuff, it never changes. Your system prompt, tool definition. So, there's only a very, very small part of the next invocation that's actually ever going to change. So it just, yeah, it just makes sense in so many different levels.
So do you enable prompt caching at the agent level in Strands when you configure the agent? Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that configures that on Bedrock. Well, I
exactly.
mean,
Does it all
prompt
for
caching.
us.
Good, good. Any other solution that you look into for so you said okay, model selection. So finding models that are efficient and cost effective, and you are also reducing basically the scope of what an agent does. So the model can be working. You have prompt caching. Anything else?
Just in general, being wary of the context you're putting into the model, right? Like you have to be like early days we seen that like a lot of people just wanted to take the output of an API and just dump it all in the model and say, yep, model, you do all the analyzing and that's fine, right? Like that's not cost effective, and that is also a quick way to fill up your context window and just make your experience worse. So we pay like a lot of attention to what are our tools outputting, what can we remove from it,
Mm-hmm.
and just general tips, because what we found is we're working on the core agent, and we allow or we accept like contributions from other teams like the domain experts to
Okay.
build their own sub agents. And this is it's working well in the way that our team have now gathered a lot of knowledge of the do's and don'ts of building agentic AI. So when we get these PRs, we're learning a lot, and we're paying a lot of attention to what are you guys outputting from your tools, where can you improve it. So I think that's one of it's an example of the small things you can do that really will help, is just understanding where the costs come from and like what can add to them. So where are the tokens coming from?
And one thing one example of that recently that we've had is that we've got 2 recent contributions that require like recommendations on large blobs of config, let's say. And they have massive prompts that, outline the different structures of that config and the different sections and how, what a good, config looks like. And that doesn't really fit. Like if that goes within an agent, you've got like 600 lines of prompt that's only really applicable to one specific tool in one particular use case. So we've actually looked at offloading that into like a tool that has its own model invocation that has no memory, and all you see is what goes in and what comes out. And you might only pass like the ID of that config. So the config never actually sits within the actual agent itself. It gets offloaded to, a stateless invocation where, like that invocation is not really going to benefit from prompt caching either, because you might only ever call it once and you never, return in time to have a cache hit. So that's something that we've looked at now and are looking at recently.
Sounds like a skill, right? Where you could
a little bit, yeah,
load that
exactly.
directly. Yeah. And
The
what
problem
about
is that, go ahead.
what about SOPs? Have you looked into those to be able to, because this particular use case of thing, I mean, reminds me of Strange Agent SOP, where you can have a workflow well defined, and it's only going to be loaded at a certain point of time when you need it.
We haven't used SOPs just yet. Maybe somewhere we should experiment more with, but hasn't really been on our radar.
Yeah, and one thing, like you'd mentioned skills there again, and like I know like me and Aaron have a meeting probably every 2 weeks to discuss how we're gonna go over to skills, but like we find that the sub agent model, like having everything kind of encapsulated in a sub agent, is great for like code ownership and all this sort of stuff, and it fits with our contribution model really well. So there's lots of other things to consider, and like that, the simplicity of just adding a tool call with an LLM call is probably an easier lift and more kind of easier to kind of fit in the people who are contributing don't have to think too much about the agentic side. Like we try and give them as much tools as we can and lift as much as we can, so that they can just because they're the domain experts, like they're incredible in their respective field and they know their own services inside and out. We just want to make it so that they only have to own that part of it and understand that part of it, and not have to develop their whole new solution, or have to really understand how agentic AI works or how the framework works, other than within their own nested agent.
Good. Okay. So, but how do you keep track of all of that? Because I mean, you are getting contributions from the different teams as you described, so that's great. But when you run all of that, so do you have any observability tool that are able to track everything that the agents are doing, and making sure that you have ways to go back if something goes wrong, or at least for the troubleshooting?
As for observability, we're really leveraging just kind of our metrics and logs at the moment. We do so. Strands offers a nice open telemetry traces like integration for us. We found we had to be a little bit careful of that, just related to like PII and managing data that way. So we have been a bit slow to adopt, let's say, traces like that. Like ideally, as developers, we would love to see everything. Like, what did that person ask to break it? Like, how do we, let me see inside. So right now, we don't really have it. I would say we have like enough observability right now. We haven't felt like we're stuck. We're able to see most of what's going on. We've built some of our own like development tools to read, what happened in a certain conversation from a test, format it nicely, just so we don't have to go clicking through UIs and reading logs and stuff. But yeah, it's it's definitely something that would be exciting to improve on. I always like an easier debugging experience.
Nice. Okay. So sounds like a great opportunity to work with Michael. I was in blast on this.
Definitely, he's offering a lot of help. He's always saying, "Come talk to me about open telemetry."
Yeah, sure he does. Good. Okay. Um, so you mentioned several times how difficult it is to move from prototyping to production. Yeah. So, and in your case, you are deploying to so many regions. So how do you? And so there are some constraints that goes with it too. So I think you mentioned about some of the features not being available across all the regions, and also probably some of the models that are not necessarily deployed everywhere. So how do you handle that?
So it's a good question. Like there's so many different models you can pick, and region availability is the thing that cuts the field down so much for us. Like there's only a small handful of models that really fit that use case, unless you want to go multi-model across different regions. So like we use the Anthropic's Chris endpoints is great. It like it gives you a much broader amount of endpoints that you can hit within each region. There are some caveats with it. Like there are some regions that you don't necessarily have an endpoint for, and you have certain agreements with certain customers and things like that, and that data sovereignty, all that sort of stuff. It opens up such a can of worms for transmitting data across borders, and that's something we've had to contend with. Yeah.
Good. Sounds good. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any advice for other teams that will have to navigate the same constraint that you may have in terms of sovereignty?
Oh, it's a good question. I think it's like use case to use case. If you're not like we deal with a lot of PII in our particular use case. So it's a particular concern for us, especially with the number of regions and all that sort of stuff. So it may not be as big a factor for other people. I'm trying to think what advice I'd give.
I'd say
It's a
do your
headache.
homework.
Yeah, do your homework.
Definitely do
Yeah,
your homework.
yeah.
Yeah, like we spent a lot. There's been a lot of time and investigations into, what restrictions do we have in what regions and what endpoints are being provided by Chris, and like, well, this one doesn't match. Maybe if we use this region instead, maybe we go direct to a region for this. There's a lot of, it's like a logic puzzle. You just have to list it all out, do your homework, match it up, and see if you can get that in a nicely presented way, and then always be able to refer to that. I think that's a good bit of advice.
Good. Okay, cool. I think we have discussed a lot of things. So, any closing remarks? Anything that you want to share?
No, just look out for Genesys. See if I know. I personally, when I only joined just over a year ago, and one of my first things was I had to like ring up my health insurance to get it set up, and it had a cool feature of, it was like, oh, do you want us to ring you back when we're free? Like I was on hold, and they said, instead of waiting on
Yeah,
hold, we'll call you back. And I was like, that's an
that's a
amazing
great
feature. Great, I
feature.
love this. And I walked back and I said it to someone. They're like, oh yeah, they're our customer. That's us. I was like, wow, this is great. So yeah.
That's perfect. Okay, so some closing questions that I like to ask all the guests. So, would you have a book to recommend? Something
Ooh.
that you find so good that you would offer that to anybody?
One that always stuck with me was Thinking Fast and Slow with Daniel
Yeah,
Kahneman.
yeah.
That one just kind of, it was like my mind was blown when I read that. I was like, oh my God, I've never thought of this. This is amazing. And so I read that a long time ago. I should probably reread it soon. But one recently was Thanks for the Feedback. I can't remember the author's
Oh,
names just off the top of my head. But first I was wondering, is this going to be a very like, oh, your career, you should get feedback? But it had a lot of good advice just for every relationship you have in life, and how to just give feedback, but also how to receive feedback, and to just have better conversations. I found it very good.
Interesting. What about you, John?
I don't know. I read a lot of fiction. I don't really read.
That's good also. That's good.
Yeah. One thing I really liked recently, and it's completely a left field, but it's Mythos by Stephen Fry. I'm really into Greek mythology, and I've read like a lot of the older kind of. It's a much more lighthearted version, more like accessible version of, let's say, like the Iliad or the Odyssey, which
Okay.
they have like Mythos, the Odyssey, and Troy, which kind of all fit into like kind of the Greek legendarium, let's say. Been really loving that lately. I throw that on when I go for my walks at lunchtime, and that kind of resets my brain for this later half of the day.
That's good. That's great. Great. That sounds good. I will try to read it as well. What is your favorite dev tool that you have discovered lately?
Oh, it's hard to look past any of the coding agents, right? They're just such a different experience. I've been playing around with a few different ones, like some Cloud Code at home, been using Cursor,
Yeah.
been using Kiro. Honestly, they're all. I find there's very little between them. It's usually a little bit of quality of life improvement in one part that maybe one has and the other one doesn't have.
Yeah.
But in general, it's just it's crazy to think. A couple of years ago, these didn't exist, and we just didn't use them. I was like, wow, how did we work without these? These are amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
But also, caveat, they're also incredibly frustrating. You go one day, you're like, this coding agent is a genius. The next day, you think, wow, why does anyone use this? This is frustrating.
All right. What about you, John?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's very, very hard to look past it. From like moving to management, you don't really, I don't get a chance to develop as much as I used to, if at all, in the last few months. I find Rovo quite useful in the Atlassian AI agent for kind of standard tasks within like Confluence, let's say. That'd be my pick.
Good. What are you going to learn or dive deeper on next?
Oh, I've recently, no action has been taken on my side, so this may be silly, but I've recently been looking more into Rust, because after leaving C++ from like the embedded world, and I kind of missed the Rust train there, and now we're working in like AI. I'm like kind of the itch to see the more lower level languages again, and obviously Rust is all the rage with its memory safety, and everyone's moving towards it. So yeah, I would love to dive a bit deeper there, get my hands dirty again with some systems level programming.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's common actually, and also thanks to those AI encoding assistant, it's even easier to build on Rust now, although not super easy, but still easier. John?
Yeah, I don't know. These questions are kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting to answer any questions. I don't know. It's hard to know. There's so many different avenues that we can explore with this particular. I'm probably like all in the product, but I like to explore different like avenues that we can kind of make things easier for our contributors and also customers. So we've got a huge big page of different optimizations we can look into the future. Like one thing that really I'm trying to fighting for now is interrupts within our actual Copilot, which makes things like user confirmation and things like that.
What do you mean? Can
Like
you expand on that?
deterministic, if you like, within Strands. Like it just seems like the kind of silver bullet for things like confirmation.
Human in the loop, right?
Human in the loop, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I'm so like my brain is so in the Copilot mode that I can't think of anything outside.
That's good.
No.
No, that's good.
Everything AI right now is like on all of our minds. So any of these, we're always wondering like, hey, how did this person solve that? I find myself, my Twitter feed is just filled with like different AI developers or people saying like, this is how we do this, or trying to sell different AI products. But it's it's so much hype.
Yeah, which is a great segue to my last question. Who would you recommend to have on the podcast? Who would like to listen on the podcast, actually?
Ooh.
If there's a particular developer or someone that you follow on social media that you would like
Let me think.
to have on the podcast.
I know our boss Cullum Halley would love to be on this. He has lots of opinions, lots of knowledge. But I've recently been enjoying Mitchell Hashimoto. His opinions on everything AI, I seem to click with them a lot. So I do enjoy his opinions.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks a lot, gentlemen. It was very interesting. Thanks for sharing your journey and everything that you have been building. And wish you a great end of the week.
Thank you, Roman. It's been great.
Roman, take care. Bye.
Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye.